I'm Tony Esselin.
And I'm Amy Bernard.
And we are here to help make it make sense.
This is the podcast that takes complicated science and breaks it down into easy to understand language.
So buckle up, buttercups. You are in for a bumpy ride.
All right, we are on.
We are on. And we're back, everyone. And we are going to cap off this three-peat with the flu. Oh, she's oohing because she's showing you her arm for the third time.
But this is the most appropriate podcast. I'm showing you the Band-Aid from my flu shot just
for the third time.
Yes, but right, but so it's still breaking news. I got this yesterday. I'm feeling fabulous. My immune system.
For those of you who have not listened to our previous two podcasts that we recorded, then it is breaking news. That is true. Otherwise, you're like all rolling your eyes like I am. We're like, this is the third Band-Aid sighting that we have had.
Well, the thing I have to tell you that I'm most disappointed about is that my Band-Aid is boring.
It is. I was going to say that is very
This is a boring Band-Aid. What I really want was here's what I'd like. I'd like a Band-Aid that has either immune cells on it or a superhero. I want a Marvel character.
Well, I think you're just going to have to rip that sucker off and go get you an appropriate immuninja Band-Aid.
Okay, so can I tell you something funny? I almost brought my own Band-Aid.
I mean, I would not be surprised. And actually, this should just be a business idea. Like, why don't you make an immuninja Band-Aid?
You know what I'm thinking about it? Because
Shark Tank that.
Here's the
Mark
thing.
Cuban stare at you like you have a third eye.
Here's the thing. I probably would sell at least 3.
I would totally buy an entire box.
Would you really?
Okay. Immuninja with doing a hi-ya. Oh yeah.
You might have been in my original count of 3.
For nunchucks? Antibody nunchuck? That would be dope. Are you kidding? There's going to be some venture capital listening to this being like, that's a good
You know what? If anyone takes it, I've trademarked it already.
We trademarked it today. Okay,
sorry,
everyone?
It's mine.
So we're suing.
That's right.
Okay, we totally got sidetracked.
I know.
So
sorry.
Let's talk about the
sorry,
flu.
not sorry.
The flu, I have to say, as a clinician, the flu shot is a controversial shot. Very controversial that people are always fighting not to get it. There's a lot of mistrust with the flu vaccine.
Okay.
And you would think that, we're doing this every year. I mean, the rates of vaccination have been really low. They've been really low, and been digging into this a little bit, trying to understand what people think about this and why this is happening. And so I thought it would be interesting for us to just do a podcast on the flu shot and the flu, since we are now in full force in flu season.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of misinformation about flu and the flu shot out there. And that's our jam. We love misinformation so that we can just immunity it,
That's right.
And give you guys some information. And so I'm gonna kick this off with, I wonder if it will be interesting. I think it'll be interesting to kick it off with a question that I received directly from a family member.
Ooh.
And then we can weave in the other questions. Okay.
Let's do it.
So I'm gonna read this verbatim, and the family member who hears this will be chuckling. But flu vaccine, I've never taken it because I was scared. Most of the people I know who have taken it have gotten the fever a day or so after taking it. Then they were good for the winter, but they suffered for a couple of days. My questions may not be relevant to this podcast, but I would ask, how does a person develop the flu in the first place? Seems like people can get it in the same way a person can catch a cold. Only these symptoms are far worse than the average cold. Is that right? Being that the flu is a morphing phenomenon, isn't it possible to take the flu shot that targets a certain type of flu, then the vaccinated person still catch a different strain and suffer just as much as if they had not received the flu shot? I think these are very sophisticated questions.
That's a lot. I would say that those are questions.
Those are questions. That is not
plural.
Just a question.
Yeah.
But I thought they were very sophisticated, and it actually enveloped a lot of the questions that I've gotten from patients over the years. So
yes,
really
I like that there was also some little statements in there as well.
I like the statements. The
Mhm.
statements are important. Okay, so I'm gonna let you go for it.
Okay, first off, freshly cocked pocket of air.
We're gonna call this episode "Freshly Coughed Pocket of Air" Part 2. If you think
I mean,
just COVID,
so
that's
flu,
it.
like COVID, is respiratory. That
That's
is how you get it.
how you get it.
It is through
That's you.
inhaling of the droplets that have been freshly coughed or even stagnantly coughed.
That's right. Ick.
Yeah, I know, gross. So yeah, so that's how you get it. What was the other part?
Well, I mean, I think it encompassed a lot of questions about like where is it? How do you get it? Why take the flu shot?
Yeah.
Don't you get the flu after you get the flu shot anyway
Yeah,
from it?
so let me address that one. So that's a great I teach this to all the students on the medical campus with the flu shot. So we get the flu shot.
Oh God. For the fourth time.
I pointed to my Band-Aid. In the flu shot is it's called a subunit vaccine, which that's a fancy word for meaning it's just pieces of the virus. And the pieces of the virus that are in the vaccine, if you look at my hand, which is the virus ball, the influenza virus, on the outer surface, we don't call them spikes proteins like with COVID, but there are proteins on the surface of the flu virus, and they do have a fancy name called hemagglutinin, or which we know them as H, and neuraminidase, which we know as N. So like the reason why you would know that is, remember they talk about H1N1 or H1N5 or H2, N9, all the different, and that's what they're referring to is the proteins on the outside of the flu, the influenza virus. So when you get an inactivated shot, that's all that's in the vaccine are essentially they've grown the virus and they've ripped the H and the N off the surface, and that's what they put in the vaccine, and they throw away the rest of the virus. So all the genetic instructions and all the other bits of the flu virus don't go into the vaccine. So that's like, I actually don't know what they do with it. Do they throw it away? I'm not sure. But they take those outer little bits, and that's what's in the shot. So you cannot get the flu from the flu shot. It is an impossibility. There are no genetic instructions. The only thing out there, it would be as if you were to shave my head and only take my hair and put it into an Amy Bernard vaccine. I know. Nothing else is there. Do you know what I'm saying? It's the outer portion. I'm trying to come up with a weird analogy.
Well, that was you achieved. You have achieved that one.
You're just plucking stuff off the surface. All the inner parts are gone. So that's the point.
I would like no one to shave my Amy Bernard's head. Thank you. And make an Amy Bernard vaccine. Thank you. Please don't do that.
So, but the point is you cannot, so you can't, but can you start to feel yucky from a flu vaccine? Your immune system's starting to train.
Yeah.
Your immune system's going to respond. So, some people might feel a little bit yucky after it, but if anyone who were vaccinated were to come down with the flu like before the 2-week mark, it's probably because they were exposed to the flu before they were vaccinated. So that's usually the likely cause. Now, I do have to tell you about the nasal form of the flu vaccine. That is live attenuated. So it's weakened. It's weakened to the point of not causing harm or disease. And that was the nasal version were for people that don't like shots, essentially, like a lot of little kids. So they were giving the nasal version, and they don't, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Tony, I think that is not as highly recommended as the shot, because they found that it's just not maybe as effective. It's still effective, but not as highly effective as the shot version. So so that one is live attenuated. So that means that it's like live virus, but weakened to the form or to the point that it would not cause disease. But that one is a little different. I've never had the nasal version. I've always had the shot form because I think it's more frequently, or it was recommended more for kiddos. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. That was how we gave them in the beginning, when they first at their 6 month.
Yeah. So
Um,
can I
yeah.
this has, I have no data for this whatsoever, so I'm just going to tell you my thoughts. Like when they were saying that that they found it wasn't as effective, I was just wondering if maybe when it was, and you probably have administered this, or people in your clinic have, is it possible that maybe it doesn't get in there all the way? Like, do you have to hold the kid upside down to keep it in
Oh, I mean, when I,
there?
you don't have to, it actually didn't, I'm sure that there was variability
Yeah.
in administration,
Yeah.
because kids are like, what are you trying to do to my nose? You know,
Yeah.
if you're trying to have a baby sit still for anything, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Because
So yeah, that,
I was like, I'm wondering if is after you get the nasal version, is it, you hang the kid upside down, like hold them like this for a couple minutes, make sure it really gets in
yeah,
there? Probably not.
right. This was like in the early days. They don't do this this was like early days.
Yeah.
When this first came out, I don't think we don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
We don't do this anymore. I actually haven't seen a nasal in a long time.
Yeah, I think it's because they found that the shot version, for whatever reason, just is more effective, so that's what's used. So does that help answer that question?
I think so. I mean, we're gonna dig into more, and
Yeah.
if that didn't answer the question, we'll go back into it. But
Okay.
yeah, just like I think one of the things that you said that was really key was that, just like with COVID, when people were like, oh, I got COVID and I got the shot and I got COVID, and they think that it was the shot that gave them COVID. It's the fact that, like, if you're not in that window of effectiveness for your immune system, you can still get sick. You can still obviously get sick. And then the other part was that, can you get infected with another strain?
Oh, yep.
Being infected with another, are you getting infected with another strain? Is that why you're getting sick?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the answer is yes, you can, but it's probably also that and then maybe you want to go into the efficacy of the flu vaccine to answer this question a little bit, because we talked a lot about this, when the effectiveness of vaccines, when we talked about COVID. So
yeah, so there's a couple pieces for this. So when the flu vaccine is made, so flu, again, virology nerd who used to teach virology, the way that the flu replicates, it is awesome. It has, like, its genome is not like one big thing, it's like little pieces. They call it segmented. So the way that it replicates, it's just wildly cool. But the point is, it can change itself very quickly. So with the flu virus, or flu vaccines, there are 7 different like World Health Organization kind of based labs around the globe that are checking for which strains of the flu are most prominent every year. And they will feed that information to vaccine manufacturers to tell them, okay, this year it's H1N1 and H5N1. And those are the ones that are most prominent. You should make the flu vaccine against those forms. Okay. So because it takes like 6 or so months to manufacture the flu vaccine, sometimes the most prominent strain of the flu that was determined at a certain point in time and then given to vaccine biologists, by the time the vaccine has been grown up, purified, put into vaccine vials, shipped around the country, flu hasn't stopped changing or mutating. Flu hasn't stopped trying to survive. So the flu, the influenza virus, can potentially change a little bit in that period of time. And it does. It's always evolving and trying to survive. And, so it takes up mutations quickly. So what happens is we make a vaccine on something that was most prominent like 6 to 7 or 8 months ago, work our tails off to make that. And by the time it's ready, because science takes time, you might have slightly different versions of the flu. So it's usually that there's enough overlap that they're effective, but they're not 100% because there have been changes in that virus in the time it took to make the vaccine. So that's really why. So it's not that, they're not trying to make the best vaccine, and they of course are, but it's time consuming to make vaccines, and that's why. So the virus will change, and that means that when they say, oh, it's 50 or 60% effective this year, it's because the virus changed so much in that 6-month window that it's going to be about 60% effective. So that's the reason. Does that seem?
Yeah, no, I think that helps a lot. I also want to clarify, I've been going back and forth saying efficacy and effectiveness, and I want to be clear about what I'm saying is efficacy usually is what we say when we're looking at the lab values, like the value in a clinical trial, how effective it was in a clinical trial, then we say efficacy. And then when we're talking about real world, like now it's outside of a trial where we've controlled all of the parameters. Now it's out in the real world. Now we're looking at its effectiveness. So I just want to, that's why I'm kind of flipping between the two. I shouldn't be, but
I know I do that too. I
do it too, but I wanted to clarify just in case you wanted to know there is a difference. And when we're saying efficacy, or if you read efficacy, then efficacy is pertaining to a clinical trial.
Yeah.
But when you're saying effectiveness, then we're talking about the way that it is in the real world. So in a clinical trial, something can be 95% efficacious, if you will. That's the word. It would be that's the efficacy. It could be 95. You go and put it in the real world, and then it goes down to 75.
Right.
And that's just saying in the real world, when you're not controlling for the variables, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for doing that, because I think I always think in my head I'm like safety and efficacy of clinical trials, effectiveness outside of that once it's in people.
Right. I just want to make sure that I shouldn't be flipping back and forth. We're going to say effectiveness from now on to talk about people. Talking about real world
out in the wild.
All right, so let's dive into your question. So why do I need a flu vaccine every year?
We need a new flu vaccine every year because there are, like I said, influenza virus is always changing. It's continually altering, mutating. We're going to have new strains every year. So influenza is one of the reservoirs, or where we would find it naturally, is in birds. And birds are global. They're crossing the globe all the time. We have birds that migrate from, the North Pole, or not necessarily, but like the north to the south. Then they go all over, right? So there are birds that migrate all over the globe, and they carry viruses and things with them, and one of them is influenza. And as they migrate and move, they interact with other species, like pigs can carry it too, but also humans. So because of that, the influenza is continually altering in these bird species, and they're going global back and forth for migration patterns. And that's how it's always going to be changing. So that's
going to change.
Yeah.
That's kind
of, so birds are global too.
Yeah. Listen, just as a plug for the Natural Science Museum here in New York City, they have an entire documentary on avian migration, and it's about the plains, the plains in the Midwest. Wow. I totally geeked out. My son was like on the floor, like, come on. I was like, look at the pretty birds. But the story was just it was such a beautiful, it was well done. Just as a plug.
I love science museums.
Oh man, that place is, it's amazing. All right. We have to stop geeking out.
It's our happy place. Okay, let's go on.
All right. And then also what I wanted to share also is that, again, just like COVID, getting vaccinated for the flu is not just about you. It's also about the people that are around you, right? And so like if you've had a new baby or if you're around an older person, just the same thing, the folks that immune systems, they're not that great yet. They're still trying to find their feet. And you have the flu and it doesn't affect you that much. My goodness, how could it affect it can affect your baby, it can affect your grandmother, your grandfather, it can affect an older person, a person who doesn't have an immune system. Like that's the reason why these things are so important as well. And so I don't want to shy away from saying that as well, is that, you as a young person might not think that it might be something, that you can get over it. You've had the flu before and you were like, I was fine. And you're not afraid of getting it again, but it's about the people around you and thinking more about community again.
Exactly.
And
also,
if your neighbor,
if you've had the flu and you're like, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. First of all, I had the flu one time. I felt like I was going to die. I remember my husband came home and I was like, our kids were real young and I had the flu vaccine. So the strains had changed enough that it was not that overlapping. And my husband came home at one point and I was like, okay, it was like day 4. Whoever you marry once I die, make sure they love our kids.
Oh my God.
And he was like, I think you're being a little bit dramatic. I'm like, you don't understand. I mean, for a person who doesn't sleep, and I do not, like, I lay down only when I'm sleeping like a couple hours a day or at night. I was like, you don't understand. I've been laying down for 4 days. This is not normal.
Right. Oh no.
So you feel awful, but like, and I have a fully functioning immune system, healthy. I don't have any comorbidities. I was in my early 30s then. Like, I just, we got to think about the people around us and people, like Dr. Tony said, weakened immune systems, people on chemotherapy, people who have had transplants who are immunosuppressives, babies too young. I mean, it's just, you got to watch out for them. It can be bad.
That's right. What are the benefits of getting the flu vaccine and why should I get it? I think we've covered that.
I think living is good.
Yeah.
I mean, so far I've enjoyed it.
It's a deadly, people forget about it. It's deadly. And I think that one of the things that has been stressing us out as clinicians is that it didn't leave. It really didn't leave this year.
No.
And so, we're like, please God in heaven, don't let there be some type of COVID flu mix.
Oh, yeah. They're different viruses. That wouldn't happen, but yeah.
Yeah. But it's just you just don't want to get COVID or then get the flu or get the flu and then get COVID and all of that stuff. Like that's not something that you want to see.
Yeah.
And it's deadly, right? It's deadly. We used to gauge, it was kind of the way that we gauged how severe COVID was like flu killed X number of children, in a year. I think it was like one child in the year of 2020, one child died of the flu. And it had been more in the previous year, but this was during the COVID pandemic. And then in COVID, over 40 children had died.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's just, we don't like dying children. That's not something that we enjoy at all. Right. Not that anybody does, but it's one of the things that helps us gauge the severity of an illness. Is seeing, as we usually tack it up against the flu.
Yeah.
And so that's usually the standard, and COVID changed that. But it's a serious illness, and it can really be, you taking time off from work, so you're losing money because of that. You're some people get really sick, and you have family to take care of, and nobody wants to be that.
Yeah.
That's just like a hashtag not for me.
Right. So the other thing I can add to the whole vaccine thing is people for a long time, and vaccine biologists are still doing this, they're trying to figure out if they can make something called a universal flu vaccine where you might get one and be done. And that would be like if you could find something about the flu that was never changing, that's always the same to vaccinate against. But so far, the flu is very good at changing itself. So they haven't really been successful in finding something that like, oh, this piece never changes, let's use this in our vaccine. So
Right.
that's definitely something that scientists have been interested in for a long time, and it's been elusive just because the influenza does change so
Right. Right.
frequently.
I wanted to add, I just wanted to clarify for the intranasal stuff that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is that they have these two formulations, and it's up to your preference as to which one that you want to get. And so if you come and you're like this, shot averse person and you don't want to have a needle, then then they're like, ta-da, we have this nasal one that doesn't require a syringe and a needle for you, right? And so that's one of the reasons that you want to get it. And then for the pediatric age, this has changed over time, but like for it's been rock solid for the last few years. Children are eligible to get this if they're over 2. So it's usually 2 to like about 9 years old or so. But we really want you to get the injection if at all possible. But there are parameters. If you're 9 years old and you don't want to get the injection or whatever, then you can get the intranasal. So it's about preference and how do we get this thing in you so that you can be protected. So I just wanted to clarify that. All right. What's in the flu vaccine? I think you talked about this. And let's talk. Can you talk about the egg?
Oh yeah. So some of the flu vaccines are created in egg. I know that this is a podcast, but you know what I'm going to do.
Oh no, we're getting visual aids, everyone.
So I know if you watch our YouTube video,
gotta watch the YouTube video.
Yeah. So vaccine manufacturing, there are a couple different ways to do it. The most common is this classic egg-based version. And we were talking about before how viruses can only make more of themselves in cells. So it turns out that influenza virus really likes to grow inside of eggs. So we can make a bunch of virus in eggs, and that's why they were doing it this way. So they'll have the virus grow in the egg. They'll eventually purify it from there and get those little pieces, the H and N, the external piece of the virus to put into the flu shot. There used to be a little bit of if people had like egg allergies, they were purified, but it was you might still find trace or residual amounts of egg. I believe that they have stepped up their game in purification, and now even people that have egg allergy, it's safe to get the egg-based version. They
That's
still
right.
want
It's
to
not
monitor you.
a contraindication anymore.
Yeah, it's not a contraindication. So anyone, even egg allergy, can get that because it's so highly purified. They still want to monitor those people, like sit in the office for 15, 20 minutes just to be sure, because any allergic response would be quick. But there are other ways to manufacture. There are ways in which they would do like a different type of cell that is not egg. And then there are some others where they use this certain method of it's a pretty kind of complicated molecular biology kind of technique, but essentially would purify out. At the end result is purified proteins that are put in a shot. Those H for hemagglutinin and the N for neuraminidase, which we all know is like H1N1 or H1N5 and so on. So those are the different ways to manufacture. So the PowerPoint, the slide the visual I just showed is also what I show PA students, medical students, dental students. They get to see all that. It's exciting.
It's very exciting, but
it's a visual, but yeah, that's it.
Is that you can still, if you're worried, you can get egg free.
Yep.
That exists.
You can.
Yeah.
You mean that's the summary from my beautiful slide? Is that
no. Well, I mean, I like to try to keep it simple here, and then but people can always rewind and they can say, hey, I like to see the visual PowerPoint. I'm going to go to the YouTube channel so that I can check that out.
Exactly.
Can I get the flu from the flu vaccine? The answer is no. Hard stop. I love that. Can I get the COVID vaccine at the same time?
Yes. You can. People are right now recommending and also giving flu and COVID vaccine at the same time. So it's a really good idea if you haven't gotten that new version, the COVID vaccine that now includes the BA4 and BA5 Omicron variants.
Right.
Go ahead and get your flu shot with that.
That's right. When should I get the flu shot, Dr. Amy?
Well, Dr. Tony, I think you see people and tell them okay, I would like to hear what you think, but I think late September, early October, best time. What do you think?
Agreed.
I think anytime, just better to do it than not.
That's right.
But late September, early October. Why? Because we know it starts to come. We start to see it pop up in communities, sometime although like you said, it's not left. It's been here.
That's right.
But like the migrating birds, thanks to the migrating birds, we're having new strains. It's usually like late October, early November, mid-November. It's November-ish is when it's going to start to pop up in most communities, I think.
No, agreed. You're trying to get it before the
Yep.
season starts to peak that's the sweet spot. But of course, obviously, if you get to January and you haven't gotten your flu shot, go get it.
Go get it. We're not saying to not get it. We're just saying if you
Right.
can earlier, that's great.
It's the sweet spot for
Yep.
it.
Yep.
How does age affect the effectiveness of the flu vaccine? We have a little alliteration there.
Aha. You want me to take that one?
This is your show.
This is our show.
No, I mean, this is the show, the flu show today.
Is that because I just got my flu vaccine?
Oh my God, this is the 5th sighting of this Bandaid.
So age affects, just like anything else, your immune system when you're first born is not as it's not as up to speed and as good as at functioning in the very beginning. And after, like, as you age, when you're like 65 and older, our immune system function starts to wane. So people on both extreme ends of age, infants and then also the elderly, your immune system is just not going to be working as well. Just, you can think of it this way: when you're starting to age and your knees are starting to get creaky and all those things, your immune system is aging as well. People in the middle, your immune systems without other diseases or comorbidities are usually functioning pretty well. So, and the other thing is with patients or people over 65, there is like a high dose version of the flu shot that can be given, and that's recommended so that your immune system elderly has more to work with to kind of overcome that barrier of the immune system not functioning as well. So that's thought to equalize the playing field there a little bit.
Yes, the high dose flu shot.
Do you give that one?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, the high dose. Is it 65 and older? I think that's what it is. Okay. Yeah.
Yep. And also remember that babies under 6 months can't get the flu vaccine.
Yep.
So, very important to do your best to protect them by you getting vaccinated. So
that's why they recommend. So they recommend that that women who are pregnant get the flu vaccine during pregnancy. Yeah. I read that you can get it at any time. I think that the sweet spot for that is like second trimester, end of second trimester. Yeah. So that when baby pops out, it's got fresh antibody from mom, freshly produced antibody. Freshly
produced antibody to counter that freshly coughed pocket of air.
Exactly. Because antibodies from mom go through the placenta, across the placenta, and those are thought to protect baby for about up to 6 months. So baby's immune system, if mom got that flu vaccine up to 6 months, baby should be protected, then gets that flu vaccine on their own immune system makes antibodies, and they're good.
Awesome. What factors influence how well it works? I think you've answered that.
I think our immune system. Right.
Right. The age and the health of the person, as you said.
And I also think that question could also be in the context of, has the virus changed at all since the vaccine was made? Again, I think it depends on, how much change has happened with the virus. I mean, between the time that they picked the most prominent strains to when the vaccine was actually delivered. Did you notice I just restrained myself?
You were trying. You went to the.
Like, nope.
I was like, oh, we got a 6. Is this the 6th? No. Did you talk about the 7 WHO global flu?
I did.
Okay, great. I wanted to make sure, and I think we covered it.
What?
I think. Let me make sure. Let me go over the question one more time to make sure that we answered everything. So in terms of how a person gets it, we talked about how a person gets it. You can get it the same way a person catches a cold, and it is far worse than the average cold. That's true. And it is a morphing phenomenon. And that it isn't possible to take the flu shot that targets the certain type of flu. It's difficult, not impossible, but it's very difficult because it's changing the way that Dr. Amy explained. Yes. And then can the vaccinated person still catch a different strain? And the answer is yes. We talked about all of that. So hopefully that answers your questions. We did it. We did our little trifecta.
I would say, just like Dr. Tony mentioned before, if there are any more questions or if anything was unclear,
that's right.
Gotta let us know.
Hit us up. We're excited to talk it over with you. So thanks so much.
Until next time.
Till next time.